The air in the deserted classroom carried a faint chill, the kind that seeps into your bones when the world grows too quiet. The windows, streaked with the faint residue of Tokyo's spring pollen, framed a sky bruised with the purples and oranges of dusk. Classroom 1D, usually a cacophony of teenage ambition and posturing, was now a silent stage, its desks and chairs arranged with the precision of a chessboard, awaiting its players. Kiyotaka Ayanokoji sat at the back, his posture relaxed yet deliberate, his eyes fixed on a single point, the door. He was waiting, as he always did, for the pieces to move into place. Kushida Kikyo entered with the grace of someone who had mastered the art of being seen. That auburn hair caught the fading light, and her smile, polished, radiant, and utterly disarming, seemed to warm the room. To anyone else, she was the embodiment of kindness, the girl who remembered your name and your birthday, who laughed at your jokes even when they weren't funny. But Ayanokoji saw through the veneer, past the carefully curated mask, to the truth beneath. He had always seen it, and tonight she knew he did. "Kushida," he said, his voice low, almost swallowed by the stillness. "You're late." Her smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second, before it snapped back into place. "Ayanokoji-kun, you're so serious," she said, her tone light teasing. She closed the door behind her, the soft click echoing like a gunshot in the empty room. "I had to help Sakura-chan with some notes. You know how she gets when she's nervous." Ayanokoji didn't respond immediately. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers interlaced, his expression unreadable. Kushida's words were a performance, a deflection, and they both knew it. She was stalling, testing the waters, trying to gauge how much he knew, but Ayanokoji wasn't here to play games, at least not the kind she was used to winning. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the desk across from him. It wasn't a request. Kushida hesitated, her eyes narrowing ever so slightly. Then, with a small laugh, she complied, sliding into the seat with the ease of someone who could make even surrender look graceful. She crossed her legs, tilted her head, and fixed him with a look that was equal parts curiosity and caution. "So what's this about? You're not usually so cryptic." Ayanokoji's gaze didn't waver. "I know," he said simply. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Kushida's smile froze, her fingers tightening around the edge of the desk. "Know what?" she asked, her voice still light, but laced with an edge, like a blade hidden in silk. "Everything," Ayanokoji replied. "You're past your real personality. The things you've done to keep it hidden, the lies you've told, the people you've manipulated. I know about the incident at your old school. I know why you're so desperate to keep Class D in the dark." For a moment, Kushida didn't move. Her face was a perfect mask, but her eyes betrayed her, wide, searching, calculating. Ayanokoji watched her closely, noting the subtle tells, the way her lips parted slightly, the faint tremor in her hands. She was cornered, and she knew it. But Kushida Kikyo was not the type to go down without a fight. "You're bluffing," she said, her voice steady now, though it cost her effort. "If you had proof, you'd have used it already. You're just trying to scare me." Ayanokoji tilted his head, the ghost of a smile tugging at his lips. It wasn't amusement, not really. It was the kind of smile a predator might give before the kill. "Do you want to test that theory?" he asked. "I can give you details, names, dates. The exact words you used when you destroyed that girl's reputation. Or would you rather I skip to the part where you threatened to expose your classmates unless they turned on her?" Kushida's composure cracked. Her smile vanished, replaced by a look of raw, unfiltered panic. She leaned forward, her hands gripping the desk so tightly her knuckles turned white. "How?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "How do you know?" Ayanokoji didn't answer immediately. He let the silence stretch, let her stew in her own fear. This was the moment he had been building toward. The Kushida let out a sharp, bitter laugh that filled the empty room. "You're trying to control me," she said, her tone laced with frustration. "You think you can just push me into doing what you want." "Not control," Ayanokoji replied calmly. "I'm asking for your help." We work together to reach our goals, and in return I'll support you in keeping your reputation intact. It's a fair agreement. Fair. Kushida's voice spiked, her composure wavering. You call this fair? You're putting all this pressure on me and acting like it's a simple deal. Ayanokoji remained steady. You're still here, he said. You're still in Class D, still well liked, still the person everyone admires. That wouldn't change if we worked together. So yes, Kushida, I think it's fair. She glared at him, her breathing quick and uneven. For a moment it looked like she might explode, shout, cry, or storm out. But then gradually she leaned back in her chair, her hands resting in her lap. The intensity in her eyes didn't vanish, but it shifted as if she were calculating her next move, searching for a way to regain control of the situation. What exactly do you want from me? She asked, her voice steadier now, though a trace of irritation lingered. Ayanokoji's expression stayed neutral, but he noted her change in tone. She was adjusting as he'd expected. Kushida was resilient, someone who could adapt to challenges without crumbling. For now, nothing changes, he said. Keep being yourself, friendly, approachable, connecting with others. But when the time comes, I'll need your assistance. You'll help influence decisions, share insights, create opportunities. You'll support me when I ask, and if I say no, she pressed. Though her voice lacked its earlier fire, Ayanokoji's gaze sharpened slightly, just enough to underline his point. Then you'll be on your own to handle whatever challenges come up. You'll have to rely on yourself to keep everyone's trust. Horikita, Hirata, even Sakura. It'll be harder without someone to back you up. The idea of being on her own struck a chord. Kushida's expression faltered, her lips tightening. Ayanokoji observed her reaction closely, knowing how much she valued her connections. Her fear of isolation was clear, and he'd chosen his words carefully to highlight that. You're impossible, she muttered, her voice a mix of frustration and unease. Ayanokoji didn't argue. Maybe, he said. But I'm the one offering you a partnership. It's up to you to decide if you'll take it. Kushida's hands balled into fists, her nails pressing into her palms. She wanted to argue, to push back, to challenge the calm, unyielding boy sitting across from her. But she held back. Not when he'd already shown he understood her better than most. Not when he'd seen through her carefully crafted persona to the insecurities she'd worked so hard to hide. Fine, she said at last, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. I'll do it, but don't think this makes us allies. I'll never trust you. Ayanokoji nodded, as if her acquiescence was a foregone conclusion. Trust isn't necessary, he said. Results are. He stood, his movements smooth and unhurried, as if the conversation had been nothing more than a routine discussion about homework. We're done here, he said. Go back to being the perfect Kushida. I'll contact you when I need you. Kushida didn't move, her eyes fixed on the desk in front of her. She felt like she was drowning, like the walls of the classroom were closing in, suffocating her. But she couldn't let him see that. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction. As Ayanokoji reached the door, he paused, glancing back at her. One more thing, he said. Don't try to outsmart me. You won't like the consequences. And then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him, leaving Kushida alone in the darkening classroom. She sat there for a long time, her mind a whirlwind of fear, anger, and desperation. She had been outplayed, outmaneuvered, and now she was trapped. But Kushida Kikyo was not one to stay down for long. She would play his game. For now, she would smile and charm and wait for her moment. Because if Ayanokoji thought he could control her forever, he was mistaken. The sky outside had faded to black, the stars hidden behind a veil of city lights. In the silence of Classroom 1D, a new game had begun, a game of secrets, power, and survival, and neither player intended to lose. The days that followed were a study in contrasts. To the outside world, nothing had changed. Kushida was still the heart of class, her laughter filling the hallways, her kindness smoothing over conflicts. She helped Hirata organize study groups, teased Ike about his latest crush, and listened patiently as Sakura stammered through her anxieties. She was perfect, flawless, untouchable, but beneath the surface, everything was different. Every smile felt like a lie, every kind word a performance. She was hyper. Aware of Ayanokoji now, his presence like a shadow at the edge of her vision. He didn't approach her, didn't speak to her, but she felt his eyes on her, watching, waiting. It was maddening, the way he could blend into the background, unnoticed, yet omnipresent. She hated him for it, hated the way he'd stripped away her control, her safety. At night, when she was alone in her dorm, the mask came off. She would sit on her bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying their conversation in the classroom. His voice, cold and unyielding, echoed in her ears, complete, unconditional, and absolute. The words were a chain, binding her to him, and she despised it. But she was also afraid, afraid of what he knew, afraid of what he could do. She had spent so long building her perfect life, her perfect image, and now it was all at risk because of one boy. She tried to find a way out. She considered confronting him, exposing him before he could expose her. But Ayanokoji was a ghost, untouchable, his motives hidden behind those unreadable eyes. She thought about running, transferring to another school, starting over, but her past would follow her, as it always did, and besides, Ayanokoji had made it clear he would find her, no matter where she went. So she played along, she smiled, she laughed, she waited, and slowly she began to plan. Ayanokoji might have the upper hand now, but Kushida was no stranger to manipulation. She would find his weaknesses, his secrets. She would turn the tables, make him regret ever crossing her. It would take time, patience, and cunning, but she was willing to wait. Meanwhile, Ayanokoji watched from the sidelines, his expression as blank as ever. He knew Kushida was plotting, knew she would never fully submit. That was fine. He didn't need her loyalty, only her compliance. She was a tool, nothing more, and he would use her until she was no longer useful. That was the game he played, the game he always won. But deep down, in a part of himself he rarely acknowledged, Ayanokoji felt a flicker of unease. Kushida was dangerous, not because of what she could do, but because of what she represented. She was a mirror reflecting the parts of himself he kept hidden, the coldness, the calculation, the willingness to destroy to survive, and in that reflection he saw something he didn't want to face. The game continued, a silent war waged in smiles and secrets. Class D moved forward, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. Horikita pushed for unity, Hirata mediated conflicts, and Sakura slowly found her confidence. But in the shadows, two players circled each other, each waiting for the other to make a mistake, and in the end only one would emerge victorious.